All right, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me okay? Excellent. Did everybody have a good lunch? Networked with everybody, got to know somebody new? Excellent. So my name is Ursula Llabres, and like you, I'm a very passionate customer success practitioner. Who knew that 11 years ago, when I applied to Salesforce for the sales engineer role, they came back to me and offered me this customer success manager role. I was in Toronto at the time. And I said, so is this a new role? Yes, I think you would be a great fit. And little did I know that when I accepted it, my life would be changed forever. Since then, I've worked at Microsoft Office 365 and at Box, and recently in Utah, VP of Customer Success at Inside Sales. And I'm proud to announce, too, that as of Monday, I'm actually moving back to the Bay Area because I've accepted the role of head of customer success for Facebook at work. Thank you. And I think that really speaks to the growth of our practice. What this means is that events like these are extremely important for all of us because I learn every day from each and one of you and from the people that work in my team. So I think this is just a good opportunity for all of us to learn. In the next 30 minutes, what I'll do is I'll share a personal story, an ode to Utah, I like to say. And then I'm going to focus on one use case because a lot of what I've heard is we want you to go deep on something. And this topic, customer success segmentation strategies from tech touch to high touch, is a very big topic, very broad. So I've tried to focus on one of the elements that I think is important based on a personal experience. And I do welcome interaction. So what I encourage you to do is to go to Slack, and if you have a particular question around prioritization strategies or segmentation strategies, post it, and I'll see if I can pause during the presentation to take some questions and then move forward. Okay, my clicker. Let's see if this works. Excellent stuff. We went through that. All right, so 2 weeks ago, as a family, we decided to go to National Park of Moab. So before we leave the state of Utah, we wanted to do something adventurous, and we decided to go off-roading. We rented a 2-hour self-driving ATV tour through the Rocky Mountains. And my husband and I have never driven an ATV. And we thought, how hard can it be? Just like our customers wanted to self-implement. So we had a tour guide. We had the journey mapped out. We knew what to expect. And between my husband and I, we split the legs. So I went first, and then he would drive the way back. So the first mountain is called the Lion's Back. And nobody prepared me for how steep, narrow, and high that ride was going to be. Of course, I am freaking out in silence because my husband is holding on to the handle looking at me, and my kids are like, yes, mommy! And I'm like, I can do this if I just follow the guide. Basically, after a while, we got to trust the tool that we were in, the ATV, and then we actually had a lot of fun. But like anything, you never get ready for the unexpected things. I call it my risk moment. When you see the picture of my son Lucas, and one of our stops, he actually decided to get on top of the ATV. What you don't see is that on the right side, there is a cliff. So we had to nicely talk to him off the ATV on the other side. That was a red account moment, I call it. We were at risk of attrition in that situation. But at the end, we took a picture as a family, and we did it. And one of the things that I came away from that experience was that the company that created the tour really did a good job, because on the way out, we actually saw a lineup of ATVs that they had. All these people going through the same exact experience that we just did. And I'm like, wow, they really got it well. They have a very focused, one route, well done, they're scaling their business. And what I thought was really clever is that they kept it simple. They kept it focused. And imagine if we were to make every one of our hundreds of customers feel like they're in the driver's seat when they're about to experience that journey as they are going to be successful. So I thought that was a good analogy to start my presentation. All right. So when switching gears a little bit, when I think about customer segmentation strategies and criteria for scaling a customer success program, I think about 4 elements. I think about the need to have a customer journey. And what this means is that it's about expectations and the why. That journey of what is your customer going to expect from the moment that they sign the contract till their first year anniversary, for example, and then so on. What are those milestones, and what does good look like at each of those phases? I think that is important before you define anything else, because from that, you're going to think about the next step, which is how do you segment and prioritize your account? So these are the who. Who are you going to take through that journey? And the second point is actually what I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail through the next session. The third element is the playbook. The playbook is really the what. What do you do with your customers at which phase of that journey? And if you do an account prioritization strategy, you also want to consider the objective of that playbook, right? Are you taking them through the experience in order to further expand the account, or are you applying a risk playbook? So those are the things when I think about playbooks is what are the maps, the treasure maps that would helps us take our customers through the journey. And last, and I know there's more than one, but I figured from 1 to 3 is really around strategy, and 4 is about execution. So content for scaling your program is key. This is something that, as an organization, is what informs customers, but it's amazing when customers create content for you. Technology, like ClientSuccess tools, like sales, like CRM tools, like community tools are incredibly important for scale. And last and most importantly, great people. So today I'm going to talk about my personal experience at Box, actually before I joined Inside Sales. In 2014, I joined Box to lead their long-tail customer success strategy. So this is all of their, they call it commercial segment, and that was divided into 3 teams, the mid-market, the corporate, and those 2 were CSM-assigned portfolios, and then there's a programs team. And the programs teams was basically a pooled model for all the really small accounts, and they had many, many thousands of them. So the account portfolio that overall that commercial segment had was 47,000 accounts, and I managed about $100 million of ARR. So scale was very important in that objective. When I joined the company, one of the things that I inherited was a demoralized team. The folks that managed the portfolio felt incredibly overwhelmed. They felt like they call it the redheaded stepchild. I've heard that term before. Funny, I was a redheaded, not step, but I was redheaded child. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. They did not feel the love. And they had lost a few folks from their team. And so when I came in, that's what I inherited. And they were in a reactive mode. So they looked a little bit like this. So raise your hand, how many of you feel or have folks in your team that feel like this? Just raise your hand. Right, sometimes I still feel like that. So what happened was that they lost line of sight. The team did not know where to put their energy, and so they had no energy left. They were frustrated, they were emotional, and so the 2 things that I did when I came in to address that and the objectives that I had was 2 things. I focused on creating a vision and excitement around the commercial space. That's incredibly important, and I love the earlier presentations, the excitement, and the importance of creating meaning and alignment to an objective. The second thing that I did is create a bullseye on the things that I needed to do, simplify for the CSMs, and help them prioritize where they needed to focus their time for what. So let's talk about the first one. The first one was, how do we create energy and excitement around an objective? As a company, we had very aggressive expansion targets from a sales perspective. So in customer success, the measures were actually 4. We were measured on customer references, adoption metrics, renewals, or retention and expansion. So sometimes when you have 4 metrics, what I try to do is, what do we need to change and what can we create energy and create focus on one of those measures? And that was the expansion measure. If we do our jobs really well with our customers, if we go at it with the right mindset, then they naturally should expand, but we also have to be intentional about it. So what I did is, I did a lot of analysis about our past performance, and I went up to Leslie Young, who's the SVP of Commercial Sales at Box, and said, look, Leslie, we uncovered, about 5% of the revenue number last year without any effort. We just naturally uncovered this information. We were able to track it because we would, as CSMs, we create opportunities in Salesforce that become leads, and that's how we were able to track it. So she's like, oh my God, that's great data. I didn't know you guys did that. I tell you what, why don't you do 10% of my number this year? I'm like, well, that's double. All right. So she goes, you can ask for whatever you want. I'm like, all right, let me throw the challenge to the team. And then we can ask you for something in return, right? I said, you never leave a room without asking for something. So she goes, okay. So I go back to the team. I propose a challenge, and I said, she's thrown the gauntlet. Do we want to pick it up? And they were excited. He goes, so we can ask for anything? He goes, yeah, just whatever you want. I said, I'm suggesting a price. I was like, so we suggested 5% in terms of a bonus that would be paid out at the end of the year. And we put some regulations. And they came up with their own ideas of what they wanted to earn. And what it was is it became a team activity, a trip, like their own performance, performance club. So we got the funding. I went back to Leslie. I'm like, all right, we are going to accept your challenge if you give us this much money for this purpose. And if we can use all your, oops, there we go. Okay. Is that better? Can we hear? Yeah? Okay, good. And so I said, we want this much money, we want your sales enablement team, and we want commitment from your reps to start working with our team as a partner. She goes, you got it. And it made a huge difference to the morale of the team because now customer success, the commercial team, mattered because sales cared about it. Now we were going to commit to give them 10% of their number. And so obviously it was for a lot of the team, what I said to them, this is not your performance measure. This is absolutely an opt-in, and this is just, even if we don't get to the number, let's just create energy to at least try to do it. So the next thing that we did is awesome. We have the team, so the energy changed completely. We have partnership from sales. We have money funded for the end of the year. Now the second thing that I focused on was a account prioritization model. So what I did here is I got together with our sales operations team, or CS Ops. And I know earlier on you said you're starting to work on CS Ops. To me, CS Ops on a more mature CS organization is incredibly important These are the folks that have your data, that you're partner with data. They're going to help you understand and see what's going on in your customer base and how you can, in this case, prioritize your accounts. So what I did is I had done this at Salesforce for my team, and I had done that for my own personal use when I was enterprise CSM at Microsoft. I had to deal with 70 accounts that were enterprise size, and I created my own prioritization accounts based on data. And so what I did is I created this model based on risk and potential value. So what constituted risk? And the next slide has some of the criteria examples you can use. In this case, we try to keep it really simple. We had red account process that was very disciplined, so we could actually rely on that data. So if there was a red account in the account, then we would score it at a certain level. And the other element for risk was what we called a customer sophistication index. So this was a model for judging depth of adoption. So on the basic level, you can just have total login percent, or you can have a very basic adoption metric you can use. At Box, because they've been a little bit more mature, we developed a customer sophistication index that we used, and we were able to build thresholds. If it goes above a certain percentile, then we would score them. Basically, those two metrics created the score from 1 to 100 on the left side for risk. And what made that the potential value was total account value, which is how much money are we currently getting from this customer, and the concept of total addressable market. This is where CSOps comes and becomes really useful. They had done some analysis from Dun & Bradstreet to say how many knowledge workers at each organization, and they basically did a rough math, right, times the license for the application, and that was the total addressable market for that account. So we scored customers based on that. And for the enterprise segment, for accounts that were not in my cohort, they're actually the field accounts or enterprise accounts, we also included the concept of brand account. What this came up with was, on the right-hand side, we used Tableau to crunch the numbers and to see what do we get when we use this model. And it was interesting because we also validated it with a couple of CSMs. We would grab a CSM's portfolio and we applied this model and said, does this look right? The customers in the, so let me explain what the green, red, and blue mean. I wanted to create 3 cohorts of customers. The expand accounts, as the word says. What do we do with those accounts? We try to expand them. The retain accounts. So again, these are the accounts that are probably at risk, so we want to retain them. And the maintain accounts, and I like to say, these are the accounts that don't need time with a professor. These are accounts that are doing fine. They're neither huge high value or they're not at risk, so you can really use technology and communications to continue engaging with them. So I wanted to create really clear cohorts. These are my expand accounts, my retain accounts, and my maintain accounts. So we use CSMs to validate the effort. And then how was this expressed in front of the CSMs? This was actually all done behind the scenes. In the application, we only had one field. We called it account prioritization, and we had 3 names. We had, is this an expand account, retain account, and maintain account? And this field created workflows that would integrate with the customer success application we used at the time. With Salesforce, it was used to filter criteria for sales, and it actually was widely used through that year for both sales and customer success. We updated the information on a quarterly basis, and it didn't preclude all the kind of bells and whistles that you get from a customer success tool that can still get you a little bit of the at the moment, but we just wanted to understand how do we approach this account. So I'm going to pause for a minute, because that was like a big lowdown. Do you have any questions so far? whether you want to post them on Slack. What do you think, Burke?
Your hand, maybe I can, anyone have anything about, any question I can answer? Or she can answer?
Yeah. Good question. We did take into consideration two things: how much they currently spend for the year, and what was the white space. Both. And the way I weighted it, because we wanted to expand, I weighted the expansion potential at 75% and 25% what currently. So I weighted that heavily.
Hi, Ursula.
Yeah.
So there's also the school of thought or concern around assigning quotas or putting some sort of quotas with the customer success team. What did you see as with that exercise? Because I think that does add some fun and camaraderie around it. And so what were some pitfalls that you avoided?
Great question. Because when I was at Salesforce, we had quotas, and it becomes a pain in the butt every quarter trying to negotiate, is this the right, like, did you cheat? Did you really source it? And I was like, forget about it. And also, it creates too much energy into, I need to do this, where what we did by design is we created a team goal. Because ultimately, there's always people who are just naturally at doing well in sales, and others who are not so good. So I didn't want to make too much difference. So the leaders that were doing really well got to actually speak and teach the team on the, this is what worked for me this quarter or this month. So they actually got to teach their peers on techniques and the thing that was working. And it actually got the other folks that did not know that they had some sales skills into them to come out of their shell of sorts. But by creating a team, they were able to complement their skill sets as well and create less pressure because it wasn't part of their performance metrics. It was just icing on the cake.
So a question for the high value, high risk as an expansion opportunity. So if I'm reading that correctly, I mean, obviously high value, you want to go after more money, but high risk. So these are people who may be unhappy with you and you're going to offer them more of you. Could you explain that a little bit?
Right, so high risk are, to me, the great opportunity for expansion in the hiding. What happens is, if you have a customer who is at risk, and you really rally, I mean, obviously you don't want that situation, but if you are in that situation, you apply the risk playbook. You rally your resources, you reset expectations, and you work with the customer to have resolution and successful outcome. Those customers are more likely to expand with you than customers who are never had any issues with you in the past. And it could be maybe me as a Latin person who's like, oh yeah, a little drama brings us together, right? But it's true. There's data to prove it, and I had it there. So to me, that was good, is to have your high-risk, high-value customers were your first target group that you would focus on. The other thing that I didn't mention is all net new accounts were expand accounts for the first 3 months. And the reason being is the expand accounts assume that you have the entire sales engineers, all the resources are at your disposal to have a great experience with them. So I'm going to move forward. So the example criteria that you could use for creating a similar prioritization is shown. What I use and what I always consider is use and keep it simple, but use the data that's reliable in your business, right? So in our case, we had attrition risk level that was expressed through the red account process, and the product adoption rating that was expressed through the customer sophistication index. And then for the value piece, we just use current ACV and the opportunity growth that was expressed in the total addressable market. Some folks can use opportunities that are open, so it all depends how disciplined your sales organization is and what data you want to use that's reliable. And all right, 5 minutes is, I gotta chop. I'm almost there. Okay, very important is change management. And when I read this quote, I'm like, that is so true. People don't resist change, they resist being changed. How many of you agree with that? Right. So what happens here is the folks, the team, the CSM team, were so used to starting their day in their inbox and getting to the squeaky wheel, right? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. Sometimes that forced them to spend time with the wrong cohort of people. So we had, and sometimes they were not talking to sales. So what we did is we created a fun event called a hackathon. And we had sales engineers, customer success managers, and the renewal team. At that time, they had a separate team doing renewals, come together to create our playbooks. So we actually created an expand playbook, the risk playbook, and what we call the maintain playbook. So we actually together participated in designing our playbooks that we were going to then implement. Last thing, but very important, was technology, content, and people. So community, and what I call community is expressed both in the physical aspects, like we are here together, gathered in person to share ideas, but also is using technologies that foster community with your customers and being intentional about engaging your customers in the playbooks. These are really around for the maintain accounts, but also if you think about enterprise accounts end up really engaging in community because they have to then roll out to their divisions, right? So they use community as a tool for agility in the way that they deploy. The following are just examples of great companies who've done, really a good job with community. But what we did is we created an intentional cadence of postings. And I'll share this because it actually became something that customers were looking forward to. We had Welcome Monday, so every new customer who would join the community would get a message, a personalized message. We had Tip Tuesdays, and I would let my team design whatever they wanted to do, but it had to be a tip for the product on Tuesdays. We had Hump Wednesdays, and this was a fun day. I'm like, knock yourself out, and sometimes we put haikus, like poems, just a fun story. We had Noteworthy Thursdays, so something about content collaboration, something about the company, something that they wanted to create Noteworthy Thursdays or about the community. And we would have Praise Fridays. So we would praise someone in the community, usually a customer or somebody who's participating, and we would do that every week. And that actually created habits for my team to engage with the community, but also for customers to look forward to something in the community and then navigate to the other resources. And at the end of the year, we did it. The team actually exceeded 10% of the revenue. And they did get to go. They were between two places. They wanted to do this dude ranch. I've never heard of that before, but apparently it's a big thing. And then, or the beach. Eventually they went to the beach vacation. They sent me pictures of that. But I think what happened is, why it was so successful is that out of the 4 measures of success, we created energy around one. And the other ones were just part of doing your job. We also owned it because the team participated in changing how they did their work and how they focused. They actually helped make the process better. They owned it and were accountable for their success, and we had focused around it. So with that, thank you.